Good morning and welcome to the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 5th of November 2025. I'm Councillor Ian Massey, the convener of the Planning and Placemaking Committee. I'll now introduce you to this top table. From my far left is Councillor Grant Stewart, my vice convener, Miss Audrey Brown, Democratic Support Officer, and Mr Colin Elliott, Solicitor. And on my right is Mr Christian Smith, Development Management and Building Standards Service Manager, and Mr Paul Williamson, Team Leader, Local Applications. As this is a hybrid meeting, members joining virtually are reminded that if you leave the meeting during consideration of any application, you are unable to participate or vote on that item when you return to the meeting. This also means that if a member loses their internet connection during consideration of any item, they should not vote on that item. Please advise the clerk via the meeting chat that you are leaving the meeting, or if you have lost your connection and are therefore unable to vote on the item. And whilst we are operating as a hybrid meeting today for the proceedings today, can I remind councillors and officers to use the chat box to attract my attention, which all members should have access to. Q for questions, C for comment. I will now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies and attendance of those in the chambers and online. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Morning, members. We have received apologies today from Councillor Keith Allen. We also have apologies from Councillor Dave Cuthbert with Bailey Rona Brock substituting, and apologies from Councillor Ken Harvey with Councillor Ian McPherson substituting. And we have one member who is online. If Councillor Ian James could let us know that he's present.
Good morning, Audrey. Yes, present. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody else is present in the chambers.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member have a declaration of interest? Declarations of interest. Thank you. Item 3, the minute of the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 8th of October 2025. Can I ask a committee agree the content of the minute? I'm getting kind of tongue-tied today. Deputations. Can I ask that the committee?
Sorry, convener.
Yeah.
Could I note that in the minutes of the meeting under the Residential Development Associated Infrastructure British Car Auctions, Kinross, is noted Bailey Claire McLaren requested that due consideration be given to the local voice requesting no more housing. I specifically also referenced the Kinross development plan in that comment. Yes, sorry, local area plan in that comment. Thank you. That's the one. I do apologise. Local place plan.
Okay, that's been noted. Thank you. Okay, item 4, deputations. Can I ask if the committee agree to hear deputations on 511, 521, 522 and 523? Thank you. And on behalf of the committee, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the deputations and members of the public watching today. Your request to speak has been granted. You will be called to the lectern as we reach the relevant item on the agenda and be invited to make your deputation by the vice convener, followed by a period of time for questions from members. It is requested that the content of your deputation is kept relevant to the planning consideration in relation to the item of business being discussed. Please also ensure that when answering the question, your response remains relevant and direct to the question being asked. Move on to item 5, applications for determination. And the first application is for the change of use, alterations and extension to stables to form visitor centres comprising cafe, ticket office and shop, erection of office buildings and installation of solar array, formation of outdoor play area, vehicle access, parking area and associated works at Scone Palace, Queen's Drive, Old Scone. And to introduce the report is Mr Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, convener, and welcome everyone. As the description given by the convener said, this first application proposes to expand the offering at Scone Palace by providing enhanced visitor facilities, but also office space and a solar array. Primarily, it is focused on the conversion of former stable buildings, which are listed into a visitor centre. Also, the provision of parking and revised access arrangements for vehicles and sustainable modes of transport. I'll take you through a presentation to set the scene and outline the proposal. In addition, members will have received an update on the application, which primarily relates to introducing a phasing programme for the submission of details for the various aspects associated to the proposal. Moving on to the slides. This first slide is a satellite image identifying the extent of the site in red, with the palace itself at the centre. Next. Here we have an extract from the Local Development Plan 2, which highlights the historic garden and designed landscape, identifying that on the east side of the Tay by purple dots. The black arrow I've added shows the location of the site itself. The next slide. This shows the location of the main elements, the solar meadow or solar array, visitor centre, office, car park and adventure playground, as well as the location of the palace. Next. Here are elevations of the existing building, whereas the following slide shows the proposed elevation and highlighting the envisaged extensions. Next. Then we have plans of the office pavilion building. Next. Then a layout of the solar array or meadow. Next. This is a plan of the adventure playground, and then the next two slides show elevations of the playground within the tree. Just move through those two slides. First one and then the second. The vertical parts are the trees. The next slide shows the proposed car park and access off of Stormontfield Road. And now we'll move to a series of photographs showing the stables in their current or before condition, and then artist's impressions of the after. So this first slide shows the situation of the stable building from the southeast, noting the blank gables and roof faces and limited openings within the gable elevation to the far left. The next slide shows what would be in situ with the proposed extension, roof lights along the roof face and the windows having been updated. The copper finish to the extensions and also the same finish will be applied to entrance canopies throughout the proposals are recommended not to be approved. That is the finish, not the extension itself, and there is a related condition. Next photo. This is from within the courtyard, looking at the existing northeast elevation, noting the number of existing windows and doors. The next slide, please. Although looking from a different angle in this case, the proposed elevation is shown. Again, note the entrance canopies within the courtyard, centrally on that elevation in the centre of shot and then on the far right as well. Next slide. So we now move to the southeast internal elevation within the courtyard, where you will note the existing doors, which are a strong feature of that aspect. Next. We now see the artist's impression, which is taken through the gates and sees the previously indicated openings having the doors removed and replaced with glazing. The removal of the doors and many of the existing built windows is not recommended to be approved, again via condition. Next slide. This image looks at the southwest and southeast elevations, noting their simplicity and lack of architectural enhancement. The next slide. This showing the proposed extensions and their scale on those existing simple elevations. The next slide. We now move to a drone image, and this shows more of the building than before, showing the contrast of the simple external walls and the more detailed internal courtyard elevations. Next slide. This is the same vantage point now with two of the large extensions clear. Next slide. We then have an image again showing the internal courtyard as existing, and then in the next slide, as proposed. Move to the next slide, which again is an existing image, and then the next slide as proposed. Here noting the three extensions on external elevations, left, right, and above. So we now move away from the artist's impressions, and this next photograph shows the current relationship of the stables to the A-listed chapel, and then further to the left would be the palace itself. The next slide is an aerial image showing the newly formed access off Stormontfield Road, which will in turn be extended into the palace grounds and access the car park. That's the end of the presentation, and we'll return to the slide which shows the highlighted overall layout. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We do have deputations on the site, and so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedures.
Thank you, Convener. Can I call on Lord Stormont? Lord Stormont, you have 5 minutes for your deputation. I'll start the clock when you feel comfortable to start.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. Thank you also to the Planning Department for the recommendation for approval of this generational investment in the history and heritage of Scone, Perthshire and of Scotland. The Stables project is of immense importance to Scone Palace and the region. It represents a major opportunity to evolve and enhance the visitor attraction at Scone Palace, creating a positive step change in our offering. The development of the stables will enable current retail and catering spaces within the palace to be repurposed for improved interpretation of our Scottish, royal, ceremonial and parliamentary history, which is currently underrepresented. Importantly, the project will allow Scone to add weight to the local tourism offering, adding a second wave of interest to the return of the Stone of Destiny to the region, complementing Perth Museum's offering. Next year is a special year. It is our 60th anniversary of opening to the public, a bold decision my great-grandparents made and committed huge resource to. Their investment has served Scone well for 5 generations. It is our hope that the Stables project will enable Scone to prosper anew for the next 60 years. The plans presented to you all have been close to 10 years in the making. Understanding their context and the reasoning behind some of our decisions is key for your deliberations. Renewal is one. The attraction at Scone has not significantly evolved since 1966. Our ability to reinvest in the fabric of the palace and the other heritage assets that we are privileged to be the stewards of is diminishing rapidly. Critically, we are a business, a significant local employer, plus a partner and enabler to other local enterprises. We want to continue to punch high, but are now battling in an increasingly competitive tourism market in Scotland. We, and indeed Perth Museum, need to compete with the likes of the V&A and Stirling Castle to draw people to visit and stay in Perth. Visitor expectations have increased. Visitors demand special and memorable experiences. Our unique heritage and the stories we tell meet expectations. Our interpretation and facilities do not. This is why the Stables project is so important to Scone, Perth and the region. We wish to use our deputation to ask for one change to the proposed consent. This is the removal of condition 22 regarding cladding. The guidance by Historic Environment Scotland on managing change in the historic environment allows for an assertive contrast, where extensions to listed buildings have their own impact and presence alongside the existing property. We feel this is the appropriate decision to take in this instance, creating a presence which addresses Moot Hill and the palace, while linking the inner courtyard to the wider palace grounds. We have made these extensions unapologetically modern to highlight and celebrate the history of Scone, Scone Estate's modernising mission as a whole, and to support the creation of a world-class visitor attraction which competes with other leading destinations and justifies the significant investment proposed. The bright metallic appearance of the copper cladding provides a clear visual identity tied to the crowning place of Scottish kings. This bold, assertive look and feel will help the new visitor offering at Scone Palace stand out, providing an elevated experience which will meet visitor expectations. Our desire is to reflect the pink warmth found in the sandstone of the palace and the chapel on Moot Hill. The colour and materiality create a visual connection to the similar bronze cladding used on Perth Museum, providing the thread which weaves together the current and former homes of the Stone of Destiny as a cohesive offering at the heart of Perth and Kinross. It is our view that the copper cladding should be approved now as part of the application before you, and that this condition 22 should be removed given the strong historic, aesthetic and business cases that have been made for the copper cladding finish. Scone Palace is excited by the prospect of gaining approval for these transformational plans. To achieve a permissible application, we have had to make a number of changes to the project which have put its viability in question. This is a major concern, and being truly transparent, the economic reality of our situation means this project is going to be extremely difficult for our business to realise, as many councillors gathered here today will understand. It is likely, given the current economy, that we will only be able to approach this project bit by bit as enabling business comes forward through our master plan, which in turn gives us the confidence and funds to move ahead. We would thus like to thank planning officers for extending the commencement period from 3 to 5 years. We remain entirely committed to Scone as a place, to the communities we serve, and determined to deliver the change required to preserve and promote the history of Scone and the region. We would like to conclude by thanking all the hard-working officers and staff of PKC Planning Department and the Planning Committee who have engaged with us throughout this process from initial pre-application discussions to the meeting today. Whilst there are still some points to address, as I have outlined, we welcome the support for the proposals and the recommendation of approval, looking only to have condition 22 removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Stormont. Are you willing to take questions from members? Yes. Members, can you populate the chat function if you have any questions? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thanks for your deputation. In relation to the condition 22 and the copper cladding, which reading the papers looks like it was HES, Historic Environment Scotland, that were looking at that. And certainly a question I want to ask officers, but to give you the chance to respond first. Why, from your perspective or from your architect's perspective, why do you feel copper works very well with the old building, and why do you feel it's an appropriate finish, given there's concerns elsewhere about that?
It's a really good question, and we did think long and hard on this. We like the copper clad finishing in the fact that it mirrors the pink warmth of the sandstone of the palace and other heritage buildings in the area. That's important to us. But also the key element is it is an extremely competitive market that we're in, and we need to compete to bring people in and repeat custom in to the building and to see the palace. And it is critical that these stables will enable the other heritage assets to continue to be restored and maintained to an appropriate standard. At Historic Environment Scotland, have recognised. And we had great dialogue with Historic Environment Scotland, and yeah, we obviously had a back and forth with them. We reduced the scale of the elevations, some of the elevation extensions up on their feedback, and they have not objected to the use of the copper cladding at this point. Sorry.
Thank you.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Thank you for the deputation. Looking at the plans on the screen, the core of this really is the changes to the stable area. That's the crux of it, which is listed B, I understand. As it stands at the moment, is it do visitors go to it? Is it just for your personal use of the business? Is there any visitor attraction to it at the moment, or is it just used for your own storage, whatever? Do visitors go to it and see it as a building to look at?
No, it is an eyesore. It sits in the garden, and visitors can walk all around it. They can access nearly all parts of it, but it is an eyesore. The only bit of interaction there is currently in there is a QR code which enables them to see these plans as part of our consultation work. But no, currently it's used for a few different things. We have multiple events at Scone now, and quite a lot of event storage is there. The gardening team use it, and there is currently a residence there for one of the caretaking team as well. But it is hugely underutilised.
Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. You touched on the economic aspect of this. Will this open up more of a local business, more of a sort of regular local business, as well as the tourist market? Do you envisage that?
That is the key element of this proposal. When you say a step change to our offering, currently we are paid to view, paid to access model only. This will change that so that model will remain, but we will be free to access 365 within the confines of the stable block. That will remove a lot of the seasonal element of our business currently, and enable much more the local market to come along more frequently. We have a Friends of Scone membership currently, which actually is very, very well subscribed to, but we still interact in terms of the palace and that offering very little with the local market, and that's what we would like to change with this development.
Councillor Braun.
Sorry, another question that came to mind. Going back to the copper placement, my understanding from what you were saying was it's the colour that you're looking at to blend in with the building. Copper's quite expensive, I assume, as a metal. If condition or we can't get this condition moved, or we're not happy with that, is there some brick alternative that matches the colour that you would use? So is there a plan B, I suppose, what it comes down to?
There isn't really a plan B, if I'm being honest. We've spent 10 years, just under 8 years probably, looking at this project. We looked at it from every single angle. Poor Robbie, our architect, absolutely hates us at this point, because we've changed it so many times, and obviously COVID got in the way and all those things. We looked at other colours, like copper, like on Perth Museum, but it didn't have that same sort of rouge, the pink element to it. We looked at other things, stone, wood, and everything else. For the fact we are a visitor attraction, we feel this is really relevant, and we welcome the use of it on Perth Museum, and I've noted it's been used elsewhere. I myself have visited other sites, one in Oxford University, one in London, to see, because obviously this is on our doorstep, you could say. We are very much going to be interacting with this on a daily basis, so I wanted to understand how it, if it weathers at all, what's its longevity and sustainability, and we have been convinced that it is the right way forward.
Lord Stormont, there's no further questions. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations on this application. I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thank you, Vice Convener. Do committee have any questions for officers? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Convener. Just looking for more information on the process that went through to come to condition 22 being included in here. I did have a quick look at the HES's Historic Environment Scotland's response to this, and their concern, and correct me if I'm wrong here, their concern was that the probably twofold, if I'm summing up my reading of it, was that the copper would mean the extension would become more predominant rather than sit in the background and complement the older part of the building, and secondly that it would copper changes. We know it changes when it's thinged, and they say there's an unpredictability about the changes within the copper. So it's just to understand how that process happened, and you know what the real concerns are from the officer's perspective, or is this just because the Historic Environment Scotland felt something, so we put in a condition in because they felt that as well? Thank you.
Thank you. I think the length of your question there reflects the length of the time that this issue has been discussed. We've been going back and forward for quite some considerable time to seek to get an amendment made. I'd maybe make it clear that we are not saying that the scale of the extensions is not acceptable. It's the finish to it, and maybe to clarify for you, and I try to identify that in some of the pictures that were shown. The external walls of the stable building are very simple. I mean, more or less just stone walls, very few, if any, openings, and what we're seeing is fairly sizable extensions added to that, and the finish of them is very contrasting. I think the considered view is that attention is overly drawn to this new intervention from what is currently a very simple situation, and that a more muted or recessive finish to it would be much more appropriate. It's not agreed that considering this specific historic context that it sits particularly well in relation to the finish that's proposed, and overly draws attention to the extensions on those very basic elevations. But I think it's quite clear that the considered view is that the finishes are not felt to be appropriate, and that a number of other suggested alternatives have been made. But you know, the applicants have made it clear that that's the finish they want. So to cut to the chase, we've brought the application to the committee with the condition, rather than continue to negotiate. I'd maybe also make it clear that Historic Environment Scotland would not generally object to applications unless there was a matter of national importance, but they have made their concerns clear. I think Lord Stormont referred to their guidance, and they, as the authors of that guidance, are indicating that they are not comfortable with the proposals as set out in relation to the finish, and that is the view shared by our own conservation team. So hopefully that gives you some clarity.
Can I just a quick supplementary, please? Just you mentioned that, you know, the recessive kind of material used, and some suggestions have been made. Could I ask what the I know you can't force them and you're not putting it, but if suggestions have been made, can we know what they are, please?
I think there are multiple. You know, I wouldn't want to dial down in anyone, but there are multiple options that we've put forward that we would be supportive of.
Thank you.
I'm not allowed to know what the type of options are. No.
Stone, all sorts of different things. You know, almost everything.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, convener. And mine pretty much a bit of a daft question, as you'd expect from me, convener, but it's along the same vein as my colleagues just asked, and it is regarding the material and the alternative. Way I'm reading this, the condition as it is that we want the building but just without the cladding, nothing else to replace it or whatever, but just the building. Can I ask what the major issue is with actually having copper as opposed to anything else? You know, what makes it so bad, please? And the other, while I'm there, sorry, pretty much on the same vein, I'm conscious that it's a building of importance, but I noticed also in 23 and 24, it's doors and windows, and within my own ward, there's been a conservation area where doors and windows have been an issue, and bearing in mind we're now in the 21st century, and places like this do extend over time. Are we saying by those conditions that suitable double glazing would not be allowed, please, Christian? Thank you. Sorry for the long length of the question. Sorry.
In answer to your second part, no, we would allow suitable double glazing, but it's unclear as to what is proposed. It appears at times that the proposal is to remove every window and every door that exists in the building and replace them anew. We're seeking some further clarity on that. The submitted condition survey indicates that quite a number of the windows can be repaired and adapted such that they can remain in situ. As you might appreciate, the most sustainable thing is the thing that already exists. So there are huge sustainability questions in relation to retaining as much original fabric as possible, both in terms of climate change objectives, but also in relation to the importance of architectural and historically important buildings, that you want to retain as much of their original fabric, or the fabric which makes them architecturally and historically appropriate and important as you possibly can. And we've again had long drawn out discussions on that issue, so that gives clarity on that second point. The first point, to an extent, repeats what Councillor Waters had advised. And again, the simplicity of those external elevations of the building is what makes it architecturally and historically important in part. And what we're supportive of here is the adaptation of the building, the intervention of significant extensions on those simple elevations to quite dramatically change the appearance and makeup of the building, but it's felt that the finish should not be as proposed, and that an alternative finish should be less contrasting with the building. The view is set out that it sits well with the stone of the building, and the historic setting is not agreed with.
Thank you, Christian. Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Convener. Is it not the case that between the Moot Hill and Scone Palace and the stable block, there's a range of trees that obstruct the view and would reduce the impact of the copper?
I think the issue is not its setting, it's the building in itself. So although if you're standing behind a tree, you might not see it, the building will still be significantly altered and have a finish that's not considered to be appropriate. So it's not, can you see it from various locations? It's the building is being altered and finished in a way which is not considered to be appropriate.
So is the building of historical importance?
Yes, it's category B listed, so in the top few % of important historic and architectural buildings in the country, yes.
Thank you. Any further questions? Billy McLaren.
Right, thank you. Just on that, Christian, Mr. Smith, sorry. So list B, I'm presuming the other buildings close by, i.e. the Palace and Moot Hill area, are A listed. It is a stable block of of importance of its time when it was built. But we are looking, this application is looking to make a modern use of that. And in itself, this listing, B listing, seems to be restricting a modern use of this building, or please correct me if I'm looking at this in the wrong way.
I really just want to clarify what we're talking about here is the finish of the extensions. We are wholly supportive of 99.9% of the things. So we are not saying you cannot use this building, you cannot extend it, you cannot do what you're proposing. We're just saying, can you please finish it differently?
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Waters.
Sorry to go back to this, Christian, but you know, I understand what you're saying. You know, the historical nature of the plain old wall, but most of that is getting covered already. So most of the wall was getting covered with the extension already. So I don't see any visualization to say whether it's, you know, the wall inside it can be seen through glass or something like that, protected. But if most of it's gone already, then surely the argument with the copper is less relevant. Or am I missing?
Waters,
it's a question. There's
you're
a question.
getting into an opinion now.
Sorry. Well, I'm trying to
you
get.
could
I'd like to understand if that is the case. Is how much of the wall will be seen once the extensions are built that we're trying to protect, and how does the copper deviate from or you know, take over from that?
I think the envelope has been pushed significantly, and we feel that the level of extension, and as was shown in the presentations, they're significantly sized. So we want to try and minimise the focus on the extension and keep the focus on the building, which is of architectural and historic importance. So again, as Lord Stormont said, we have worked very closely with them and are very supportive of what they want to do, but we're focusing on a small matter in the bigger scheme of things, but it's a small matter that will really tip the balance.
Thank you. Any further questions? Bailey Williamson.
Yeah, thank you. So it's really about the glinting glare from the solar array, and I was just wondering, I'll just try and seek some reassurances. I know there are reports, but I was just seeking some reassurances that we're satisfied around the glint won't affect houses, possibly on the other side of the river, etc.
Yes.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. I won't ask for a motion because I'll put a motion forward myself for this one. And my motion is that we approve the application. I think that this proposal is not only ambitious in scope, but deeply respectful of our heritage. The development at Scone Palace represents a rare opportunity to enhance one of Scotland's most historical significant landmarks, and while securing its future as a sustainable, inclusive and economically vibrant destination. Scone Palace, a significant part of our Scottish history. It was ancient crowning place of Scottish kings, including Macbeth and Robert the Bruce, and the original home of the Story of Destiny. The palace and its grounds are steeped in centuries of royal culture and architectural legacy. The stables, a Category B listed building dating back to around 1810, are part of a rich tapestry. Their conversion into a visitor centre is, in my mind, a thoughtful act of preservation and renewal, breathing new life into a structure that has long stood as a quiet witness to Scotland's story. This application represents a significant investment in Perthshire's cultural and economic landscape. The conversion of the historic stables into a year-round visitor centre, complete with cafe, ticket office and shop is a great way to reuse a Category B listed building. It will bring new life to a structure of architectural and historical importance while maintaining its integrity through sensitive design and conservation-led conditions. The development aligns with the ambitions of the National Planning Framework 4 and our local development plan, particularly in promoting the rural diversification, sustainability and tourism and climate resilience. The inclusion of a solar array, nature-based water treatment and the active travel infrastructure demonstrates a clear commitment to net zero principles and environmental stewardship. Importantly, this proposal has undergone extensive consultation with the community and statutory bodies. Concerns around materials, tree impact and heritage have been addressed through revised plans and robust conditions. The Planning Authority has rightly recommended approval, subject to the safeguards that ensure the character of the greenbelt and the designated landscapes are preserved. I also recognise the economic benefits, new jobs, increased visitor numbers and enhanced facilities that will support the local businesses and wider tourist sector. The Adventure Play Park, themed on the Pictish folklore, adds a unique and imaginative element that will enrich the visitor's experience, especially for families. And if it's approved by a committee, I look forward to visiting with my 6 grandchildren. This is a development that balances ambition with responsibility. It respects the past, responds to the present, and prepares for the future. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Grant Stewart.
Happy to second, convener.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's any amendment? Councillor Braun.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I think we've had cases like this before. When we're dealing with listed buildings, there's always a balance to find, and it's a balance between what was and what is to be. We want to try and retain the historic relevance of whatever it is, but we have to recognise that the world is changing. I concur with everything you've said with this case. I think it's right. The plans are quite right. We have a very important building in history here for Scotland, and it is quite significant, the importance of it. But we have to recognise that things have to evolve, because nothing evolves, it dies. It's as simple as that. So to sum up, really, I'm concurring with everything you said. I think it's a well thought out way of moving forward and retaining the significance of the palace. My concern always with these is that if we don't do things right, then what we've tried to preserve starts to break up and deteriorate. So my amendment, basically, to sum up, not to go into a long spiel, is to follow your advice. Is to move the paper as it is, but with condition 22 removed, because I think there are other conditions in here which are going to cause a lot of negotiation. Windows and doors. I don't think, with due respect to what the Historic Environment Scotland said, planning officers, I think there's no point in holding this back for that point. There's other things got to be negotiated here. So my amendment is simply the paper as it is, with condition 22 deleted. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James, you wish to second?
Yes, thanks, convener. In fact, Bob has pretty much, sorry, Councillor Braun has pretty much said everything that I was going to say. These historic buildings are just that, they're historic, and they tell a story, and over the years they're extended. The palace itself has probably been subject to extension in the past, and it's now become part of the history. This is an opportunity to add to a wonderful building and a thriving business as well, by the way. But this will become history in the future, and it will be part of that story. So, like Bob, I'm quite happy to see the condition 22 removed, because I think this has been discussed by architects for a number of years and what have you, and it is, I guess, a personal view. But yeah, quite happy to second the amendment, please.
Thank you. Is there any other amendment? No further amendment. Then can I ask members if they have any comments on the application? Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, convener. Yes, my comment is when we, as Perth and North Council, invested in our new road, the new Kingsway Destiny Bridge, at significant capital investment, we were opening up economic opportunities. This application very much mirrors that, and it's welcome. And this application is from a significant local stakeholder, and it's heartening to see the willingness to invest, although we have heard from Lord Stormont that it may take a few years to come to fruition due to the economic pressures. But it is a very welcome application to be reading through and bringing to committee for us to make a historical decision on.
Thank you. Any further comment? No further comment. Councillor Braun, do you wish to sum up?
No, I think we've said enough from convener. But like yourself, I will be taking my 2 grandchildren to it, whichever happens. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll sum up for myself. All I would like to say is that the officers have put in various conditions. These conditions were put forward to try and bring this application to an end. I believe that the officers and Lord Stormont and his team can come to an agreement on the way forward. I don't see any reason to delete condition 22. So I'll hand over to Mr. Elliott now.
Thank you, Convener. Members, just to be clear what is being proposed, the motion by Convener, seconded by Vice Convener, is to approve, I was about to say per the report, but remember there's the update. So it's per the update to conditions and of course section 75 as is. The amendment by Councillor Braun, seconded by Councillor James, is again to approve per all the updates, but under deletion of condition 22 in relation to the copper cladding finishes. So it's motion approve as is on the updates, amendment approve under deletion of condition 22.
Thank you, members. In terms of standing orders, we will now move to a roll call vote. When I call out your name, if you can advise whether you're voting for the motion to approve the report as it stands or the amendment to approve the report with the deletion of condition 22. Councillor Bob Braun.
Amendment.
Bailey Rona Brock.
Amendment.
Councillor David Illingworth.
Amendment.
Councillor Ian James.
Amendment.
Councillor Ian McPherson.
Motion.
Councillor Ian Massey.
Motion.
Bailey Claire McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Grant Stewart.
Motion.
Councillor Richard Waters.
Motion.
Bailey Mike Williamson.
Motion.
Thank you, members. We have 5 votes for the motion and 5 votes for the amendment. Therefore, in accordance with standing orders, the convener has the casting vote.
Thank you. And I'll use my cast and vote for the motion. So therefore, planning permission is granted, subject to conditions and a section 75 agreement. Thank you. Okay, we'll swiftly move on to 512, which is for the erection of 24 dwelling houses and associated works, change of house type and plot layout, approval of matters specified in conditions, phase 2, Scone North. And to introduce the report is Mr. Smith.
Thank you, convener. Thank you, Convener. We're just waiting for some people to leave the chamber there. This application relates to the change of 24 house types from those previously proposed by AJ Stephen to those of Charles Church. It's not considered that there are any significant changes between the previous and now proposed developments, and I'll take you through a brief presentation to set the scene. The first slide. This shows the site highlighted in red. We then move to a slide which is an extract from the LDP2, highlighting the site location within the wider H29 housing application via a yellow star. The next slide. We then see the previously approved layout with the plot subject to change highlighted in blue. Next slide. This shows the proposed layout of that previously highlighted area. We then move to the next slide, which shows typical house and finishes. And the next slide, she sees a streetscape at the top of the approved Stevens house types, and then below a 3D representation of those now proposed. We then move to some recent site photos. The first looking across the site east to west with an earlier phase of development visible in the right of shot. The next slide is looking from that earlier phase across the application site and looking northeast. And that's the end of the presentation, and we return to the proposed layout. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Can I ask the committee have any questions for officers? No questions? Nope. Okay then, can I ask for a motion? Councillor Braun.
Yeah, thanks, Committee. Can we just move the paper as is?
I will second that motion. Can I ask if there's any amendment? No amendment. Do any committee members have any comments? No comments, therefore planning permission is granted. Thank you. Moving swiftly on to 513, the erection of 64 dwelling house and associated works, phase 2, change of house type and plot layout at Scone North. To introduce the report is Mr. Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. This application again relates to the change of house types from those previously proposed by AG Stephen, but this time changing 64 plots to those of Persimmon. As with the previous application, it's not considered that there are any significant changes between the previous and now proposed developments. Again, I'll take you through a brief presentation. The first slide. This shows the highlighted area in red and to the west of the previous application. The next slide shows the LDP2 extract, highlighting the site location within that wider H29 housing allocation with a yellow star. We then see the previously approved layout with the plot subject to change highlighted in blue. And the next slide is the proposed layout. Next, we see a streetscape of the approved Stevens house types above, and then below a 3D representation of those proposed. We then move to some recent photos. The first looking across the site from south and looking northeast. Then the next slide from further west and looking north. And that is the end of the presentation, and we return to the proposed layout. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you again, Mr. Smith. Can I ask the committee have any questions for officers? Councillor Braun.
Yeah, sorry, Convener, something went wrong there. It's worked now. It's just probably a couple of points regarding parking, if I may. affordable housing. We've got some affordable housing in this site. And one of the concerns always raised with these is the amount of parking for those properties. Obviously with flats, you haven't got an immediate driveway to park on. So I just wonder how many spaces we've allocated for the affordable housing, because I think from memory, the official guideline is half a space per property. I'm not sure that's right, but you often find that there's an allocation of one parking space for each property when, you know, most people have 2 vehicles, maybe a van, a car, whatever. And the other point, just to tack on the back, if I may, is obviously when we're dealing with flats and we're switching obviously gradually to electric vehicles, will there be a facility for charging points for people to charge their vehicles somewhere within I presume will be communal parking?
Taking again your second point first, the building regulations require that there are EV charging connections available, so that should deal with that. The second point, and without going into the plans and counting individual spaces, we are satisfied with the number of spaces that are available, and there's no objection from our transport team. We do have representatives here. If you want them to count up the number of spaces and tell them now, we can do that, but we can certainly give you confirmation afterwards as to the split, but we're satisfied with the arrangements.
Any further questions? No further questions. Therefore, can I ask for a motion? Oh, Councillor James, are you putting in a motion?
Yes, it was to approve the papers, same as the last one, as is, convener. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bond, you wish to second?
Apologies, yes, I'll second this one.
Thank you. Can I ask if there any amendment? No amendment. Do members have any comment on the report? No. Okay, then that's planning permission is therefore granted. Thank you. And we move on to the next item, which is 514, which is the erection of 18 dwelling house and associated works, change of house type, plot layouts, and removal of private driveway for plots 135 to 152. Land 200 metres west of Blairgowrie and Rattery Cottage Hospital, Perth Road, Blairgowrie. And to introduce the report is Mr. Smith.
Thank you, convener. And here we now have a further application, again proposing a change of house types from those previously approved, although the previous and current proposals are both from Persimmon. The site is part of the wider Blairgowrie West allocation, and what's more, it's not considered that there are any significant change between the previously approved and now proposed developments. As was the case with an earlier item on the agenda, there was an update issued to members to tidy up some of the condition wording, and that is that revised recommendation that I'm focusing on. So I'll again take you through a brief presentation to set the scene. The first slide. Again, this shows the area subject to change highlighted in red, sitting within the wider parcel of land which is to be developed north of Dunkeld Road. We now move to a second slide, which is again an extract from LDP2, highlighting with a yellow star the site location within the wider Blairgowrie West mixed use allocation, which is coloured purple and on the west side, funnily enough, of Blairgowrie. The next slide, we then see the previously approved layout with the plot subject to change east or right of the area of open space towards the middle of the site and bounded by it on that left side, and then the internal road on the other 3 sides. The next slide highlights the layouts proposed and the remaining approved layout in a lighter shading. The next slide shows a typical house and layout. And next we move to a series of photos. The first is from a while back, and before the development commenced, and looks from the Dunkeld Road across the western part of the site. We then move to some recent photos, the first looking across the site from the south towards the northeast, and then the next photograph looking west to east at the rear of the site before the ground rises more steeply towards the trees behind which or within which is the core path. Then we move back to an older image, this one showing the core path to the rear of the site up the slope as I just mentioned, and then we move to Gallowbank Road and look northwest across the site towards where these plots would be. That's the end of the presentation, and we return to the proposed layout. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you again. Can I ask members if they have any questions for officers? Councillor James.
Thanks, Convener. It's nice not having to declare an interest of sorts because I no longer live along this road. At the time when this was first brought up, I did question the need for the Suds Pond on the opposite side of the road. It's not on that picture that's on the screen at the moment, but it was on a previous slide, I think. Has any discussion taken place regarding that Suds Pond? Because as I recall, the opposite side of the road, the field's often flooded down there, and I just wondered with the Suds Pond, will it have anywhere to go? Thank you.
Councillor James, we're discussing the fact of they want to build an extra 18 dwelling houses. That the permission for the Sud Pond has already been granted, so I don't understand the question.
Well, okay, so the extra houses, Convener, will actually be contributing to water flow, which will go into that Suds Pond, and I just wondered if the extra capacity had been taken into consideration, because I think it is a consideration. Thank you.
Just to clarify, there are no extra houses. We're just looking at different house types on the plots rather than extra houses. So the number will remain the same as was approved previously.
Sorry, my bad, Mr. Smith. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. Can I ask for a motion? Councillor Braun.
Yes, thanks, Convener. I think just move the paper. I think in this case, there's no change in numbers, of course, and work is ongoing anyway. So I wasn't part of the original approval, but in this instance, I think as numbers aren't changing, just to move the paper as is.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth, you wish to second?
Happy to second.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's any amendment? No amendment. Can I ask if there's any comments on the report? No comments. Okay.
Just to make clear, that's with the updated conditions, not per the report as written.
Apologies, Mr. Elliott. Yes, I meant to say that. Yeah.
Okay, that's cleared up. Therefore, planning permission is granted with the updated conditions. Thank you. I'm going to suggest that we take a 10-minute break at the moment. Is that okay for the committee? Yep. Thank you. So meet back here at 2:45, 9 minutes. Thank you. Okay, then we move swiftly on to 5.2, which is local applications, and the first local application is for change of use, alterations and extension to office to form hotel, corner of High Street and Tay Street, Perth. And to introduce the report is Mr. Williamson. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. The first local application on today's agenda relates to a property which should be familiar to many members. The property at 1 to 5 High Street has been used as council chambers, the registry office, district court, and more widely as council offices. The buildings, which are category B listed and within the Perth Central Conservation Area, have been vacant since 2008. The proposal in this instance is to convert this building into a 74-bedroom hotel and associated back-of-house facilities. The 19th century elements, which are those towards High and Tay Street respectively, would be retained and refurbished. while the 1930s rear extension in the courtyard area would be substantially remodelled, including the addition of a two-storey extension to the roof. The application was the subject of 3 representations, as outlined in section 39 of the report. These largely related to visual impact, noise and loss of view. The reason for the referral to this meeting, however, was that the application had been the subject of an objection from SEPA in relation to flood risk and specifically Policy 22 of National Planning Framework 4. In this instance, the principal considerations focus on securing a new use for this listed building in challenging times, whilst also meeting other council and development plan aspirations in respect of reinvigorating the city centre and stimulating economic growth. Counter to this is the conflicts with flooding policies. As outlined in paragraph 30 and 32, it outlines the respective input of SEPA and the council's own flooding team. In instances where the vulnerability of land use is increased, and in this case it's from least vulnerable to highly vulnerable, it is deemed not to be supportable. However, proposals must be considered in the round. As already outlined, the property has been vacant for 17 years with no interest in taking it forward for its existing lawful use, or any other for that matter. This is largely due to the compartmentalised nature of the building and its rooms, which form part of the listing. Therefore, it's essential to give consideration to other uses which may be viable. The proposal for a new hotel is considered to complement surrounding land uses and the city centre itself. However, failure to redevelop and reoccupy the building in early course is likely to result in further deterioration of the fabric, and the resultant conversion costs would climb even higher still. Therefore, while the conflict with flood risk exists, there is a balance to reach between seeking to manage flood risk as best as possible and seeking a new use for this building. While flood warning systems or evacuation plans are not widely accepted to facilitate a development, they have been utilised in other instances. It's therefore on that basis it's considered that weighting of the reoccupation and economic benefits a hotel offering would bring outweigh the conflict with flood risk policy. In respect to the matters raised in representations, it is accepted that noise could impact on adjacent property. As such, Condition 12 outlines the hours of construction activities to protect residential amenity. In respects of impacts on visual impact and privacy, it is accepted that an additional 2 storeys would have some additional impacts. However, the levels of light achieved at present are already restricted, and the level of difference between existing and proposed is not to an extent that would warrant refusal of the proposal. In summary, the recommendation is one of approval, subject to the conditions listed within the report. And as outlined in the first instance, if members accept the recommendation, there's a need to notify Scottish ministers of the application in light of the objection from SEPA in order to ascertain if they wish to call in the application for determination or whether the council can proceed to issue the decision. I will now take members through a short presentation to outline the proposals. First, we see the aerial plan, which shows the location of the site at the corner of Tay Street and High Street in a prominent position in the city centre. Next slide, please. Next, we see a zoomed-in aerial extract on the left, which shows the layout in greater detail, including the extension in the rear courtyard and solitary elm tree. On the right is a location plan showing the red line site boundary and the outline of the existing building footprint shown coloured. Next slide, please. Members shall now see the proposed site plan. This shows how the footprint of the building shall not be extended beyond the existing footprint and the location of the external bike storage and some limited hard and soft landscaping improvements. Next slide, please. We now see the southern and east-facing elevations of the 19th century parts of the building. In this instance, the windows, including the stained glass elements and doors, would be repaired and repainted. Other repair work would also take place to the damaged stone, sills and lintels. Next slide, please. This slide shows the respective existing and proposed elevations, top and bottom, showing the extent of the 2-storey extension. Next slide, please. Next, we see an extract of the proposed finishing materials for the remodelled rear extension. This includes rendered walls, slim profile aluminium windows and aluminium cladding in a bronze coloration at the top floor level. Next slide, please. This slide shows some axonometric views which outline the extent of the two-storey extension shown in yellow on top of the green existing elements. Analysis was undertaken in respect of daylight and sunlight impacts, together with the types of rooms being impacted upon and the existing tunnelling effect experienced already. While there would be some detriment, it was not considered to be to an unacceptable level. We'll now see a selection of site photos taken recently. These first photos show the High Street elevation on the left and the Tay Street elevation on the right. Next slide, please. Next, we see the full extent of the Tay Street elevation and where it adjoins the neighbouring residential flats above the Pend and beyond. The image at the bottom is south-facing, back towards the existing 1930s extension from within the courtyard. Next slide, please. Again, these photos are of the existing rear elevation and linked to the 19th century parts. On the left-hand side is the flats above the Pens, with windows either serving bedrooms or kitchens. On the right is the north-facing elevation towards the retained yard, with the elm, which is just out with the site, noted beyond. Next slide, please. These last photos show the former chambers on the left-hand side, showing an element of the grandeur contained within the property, while on the right is the view over the roofs looking westwards towards George Street. The two-storey extension would not project above the existing ridge heights of the existing buildings. Next slide, please. Thank you, Convener. One additional aspect that requires to be clarified is in respect of a slight update to Condition 8 to tighten the wording relating to the implementation of the Construction Dust Management Plan. In addition, Condition 10 relating to mitigation measures of the Noise Management Plan also requires confirmation as to when the measures are required by. And lastly, Informative 5 is a duplicate of Informative 1, which can be deleted with the others renumbered thereafter. That now concludes my presentation, and I leave you with the site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. We do have deputations on this item, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedure.
Thank you, Convener. Can I call Mr. Usmani? Mr. Usmani is going to be supported. Mr. Usmani is the applicant, and he's going to be supported by Mr. Thompson and Mr. Duncan. Mr. Usmani, you have 5 minutes for your deputations. Whenever you feel comfortable, I'll start the clock.
Thank you. Firstly, Chair, thank you so much for allowing me to present on behalf of our application. Sorry, is that better? Sorry. I also want to thank Perth and Kinross Planning Office. We're based in London. We grew up in London, but it's a really refreshing change to be able to work with a planning department that is so supportive and involved in what we're actually presenting, as opposed to just making it quite difficult. London is quite a difficult place to get planning consents. Our background is large-scale mixed-use development, and over the last 10 or 12 years, much more so hotels. In that, as a business, we've received over 60 awards. Best large regeneration in the northwest of England, best hotel interiors, best single house in the UK. That's just some of them. One thing that we do understand is regeneration. We grew up with conservation and regeneration and listed buildings. We've got a specific understanding of listed buildings. If we are fortunate enough to achieve a planning consent on number 1 to 5 High Street, then this will be our 8th listed building that we've delivered. So we've got a very close relationship with English Heritage, 20th Century Society that we've worked with extensively, and also more recently with Historic Environment Scotland, when we delivered the Wellington in Glasgow. In that category of listed buildings in conservation, we won numerous awards for that. One of the things that we do understand is is regeneration, as I kind of mentioned before, and the sensitivity around listed buildings. We looked at this a number of years ago, and we looked at Perth's regeneration plans at a time when a lot of the stuff that's happened since was not immediately obvious. But as we've watched Perth grow and as we've understood regeneration, we've always been very, very interested in number 1 to 5 High Street. 2 reasons. Number 1, regeneration. We like regeneration areas because I think we can add a great deal of value to regeneration because we understand it. We've been involved in regeneration and conservation for probably now 35 years. The other thing that we quite like is the fact that it's a listed building, and the listed building people tend to walk away from listed buildings because they see it as an open checkbook. But because we've done so much of it, we understand what's involved and we understand from a cost perspective. And also very importantly is that how do we take a building that is listed that was built maybe 150, 200 years ago, and how do we then repurpose that in today's, I suppose, in today's aspirations? It's important to protect the fabric and the existing building and the structure in a way that you will always know and understand that the history of this building. But at the same time, the aspiration is that you create something that people will feel very, very comfortable with, but will constantly be reminded that you are in a very, very special building. And I think that it's a very difficult thing to achieve. Part of that is not just what you see and part of what you touch. A lot of it is part of how you feel when you walk into the building. And that's really kind of important to us. And I suppose off the back of that kind of passion that we have for this type of building is, I suppose, allowed us to achieve the number of the awards that we have. I think that what we're producing here is different to what Perth already has. So we don't see ourselves as producing further competition in a marketplace where there's already competition. We see it as we're producing not competition, we're producing a choice. So it's different to what other hotels may be delivering. Our model in hotels is city centre with a limited food and beverage offering. And the reason why we've looked at it as that, because we've studied that market very, very well, and we've delivered hotels in city centre locations. The reason why we believe that a limited food and beverage offering is because when you look at how hotels are used, you'll find that during the day, they're virtually empty. Everyone's gone out. If you're in a city centre, then you're surrounded by numbers of restaurants, numbers of eateries, numbers of bars that the people that are in the hotel will go out and use. If we have a full restaurant offering within the hotel, then I'm now into a position of competition. And it's hard for us as, I suppose, as hotel operators, owners, fine, I will do, yeah, sorry. So from our perspective, we're an economic multiplier. Our people will go out and spend money within the local economy. I think that I'm pretty much completed. I suppose the final thing that we're saying is that we're not competition and we are a choice and we're an economic multiplier for the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Usmani. I know that your team are willing to take questions, so if members could populate the chat function. Councillor James.
Good morning, sir. Nice presentation, thank you. I get where you're coming from, and all well and good. Within our planning papers, we note that flooding has been highlighted by SEPA and, in fact, our own flood team. What have you, or have you taken this into cognizance? You know, and what will you be doing with regard to that? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I defer to our consultants?
Hello, members. Yes, sorry, I'm Gordon Thompson. I'm a planning consultant with Turley, and we're acting as agent on this application, or these applications, sorry. So yes, flood risk has been considered extensively. I mean, as members will be aware, not just this site, but much of Perth City Centre is is now at risk of flooding in extreme events. The extent of that is exacerbated by a change in policy brought through national planning framework, and the extent to which climate change allowance has increased. It isn't possible to design around this. The design team, one of whom is with us, they have considered this in consultation with our flooding consultants, and the limitations of the listed building to accommodate physical change to design around flood risks are limited. So what is proposed is that to be in place is a flood evacuation, or flood prevention and evacuation plan, which would be in place throughout the operation of the building, of the hotel. The hotel would be manned 24 hours. So in response to a forthcoming flood event, of which we'd anticipate there'd be over 5 or 6 hours notice, of which through the flood warning system, that could be implemented, put in place, and users of the hotel and staff could be kept safe in that manner. Thank you.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Just one more, obviously any city centre development has a big impact on big challenges from a construction perspective, but certainly a big impact on neighbours and visitors to the city centre. Can you just give more detail just on how you're going to work with local residents and various other people to minimise, if approved, to minimise any impact?
Yeah, so as you'll see from the conditions on the proposed conditions on a potential grant of planning permission, it would be the securing a construction management plan. So in that, any successful contractor that had bid and won the contract to develop the building along with our client would have to set out detailed proposals for how the construction process will be managed, any sort of environmental impact associated with that, and that would be sort of limitations on working hours, I think were mentioned by Mr. Williamson earlier, vehicle movements, all sort of aspects of the construction process would be managed in that way to ensure minimal impact on residents and other city centre users.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. It's obviously a listed building, which is going under a separate consent, which we're not dealing with. But I was just wondering your thoughts on that, and will, as construction takes place, will we see much of that from the outside, or are you working inside to maintain the fascia as it is and the rooms as they are? So, I mean, just general thoughts on that side of it.
Yes, I might defer to one of the design team here in a moment, but yeah, I will add that. So some of my colleagues and our heritage team carried out a heritage impact assessment on the building, and as part of that, it was to identify the significant features of it and what requires protection, what requires reinstatement in some cases, what are the most important aspects, and obviously the principal facades to the High Street and Tay Street are extremely important, and they'll be retained, repaired, made good. There's the sort of key internal spaces, some of which we saw photographs of earlier, and retaining those as features and as part of the proposed layout and use of the building, and also as features which people will be able to come and see. They'll be accessible, so that's a key component of the strategy there. There's some aspects of original fabric would be adjusted, and then that's offset by stuff that's been lost being reinstated. So some room proportions that have been affected through existing change that's happened in the past will actually be put back. So there's betterment in that sense.
Bailey Williamson.
Thank you, Vice Convener. My question is around the your drainage strategy or flood strategy report, and you mentioned that you're going to install a suds from the roof, which will take care of roughly 30% of the water. but I'm struggling to understand how that actually might work through drainage channels and so on and so forth. And you have a protected tree at the back of the house, of the property.
I'll defer to another team member here.
Hi, Rod Duncan, JM Architects, architect on the project. We've reviewed the water management strategy in terms of potential blue roof system, which would contain water prior to it coming through the drainage system. The tree, although it's not on our site, has been assessed. It's an elm. There will need to be works done to that tree as suggested by the arboriculturalist, in terms of some of the dead limbs, etc., which will also facilitate some of the works on site, but will not affect the tree in its long term. And that has been reviewed with the arboriculturist and the tree survey. The building line is obviously on the line of the existing building, so there'll be no change to that tree structure or the root structure.
Yeah, so your proposition is therefore to install new storm drains, or are they existing now, or are you installing new storm drains at the back of the property in order to accommodate the studs?
I think that question would have to be reviewed at a later stage once the dynamics of that have been worked out. Storm drains could be installed, so that would need to be something that's assessed.
Hayley McLaren.
Yeah, hello, thank you. My question is, we saw the pictures of the areas within the building of significant interest, historical interest. Have you had conversations with Perth Civic Trust to ensure that they have a full understanding of what your proposals are? And do you have more detail on the opening, the historic council chamber, and you've agreed to open the building to the public on specified days? Could you just give us a bit more detail around that? Thank you.
The proposals have been reviewed with Historic Environment Scotland and the Historic Planning Officer. I believe Civic Trust were consulted at that point. Again, the relationship of the building and the aspects of public access to the courtroom and the chapel area have been assessed also, and that is via a managed strategy by the hotelier to allow access to those areas. There was also discussion about potential access to the basement area, which is the original cells from the old Tolbooth when it was the police. These cells, that's also something that the hotelier discussed. Again, that's subject to a review and survey of that area and the ability to take people down there who are escorted. The use of the courtroom and the chapel area are essentially gathering spaces, meeting rooms for the hotel, and the fabric will be upgraded, retained, and all of the fixtures and fittings will be retained in situ.
One of the things that we've done is that the cells particularly are going to be retained as they are. They're not going to be turned into storage areas, which some people may think for a hotel, storage is always in demand. So they will remain as they are. The court building, we're leaving the magistrate's bench in place. We're also leaving in the witness stand. That will stay. The thing that we would like to do when we're talking about opening up for the public, it's very much about the schools in the area. that we'll be able to escort them around 2, maybe 3 times a year. We've got to kind of understand what that might look like, just so that children in the area will get an understanding of what a building like this might have been before and what it is actually now. Hope that's helpful.
Councillor James.
Thanks, convener. And second question from me again, sorry. And it kind of follows on from my concerns regarding the flooding that I previously said about. With regard to the hotel, could you give us an idea on how many bedrooms there will be on the ground floor, which would need to be evacuated in a flood event? And would this affect the ability to insure your business? Thank you.
19 floors, sorry, 19 rooms on the ground floor. And from an insurance perspective, we've already made those inquiries. It will affect our excess as opposed to its insurability.
Gentlemen, there appears to be no further questions. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations on this application. I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask committee, do they have any questions for officers? Bailey Williamson.
Yeah, it was just on the back of the question asked the applicant earlier about the storm drain and the SUD scheme, and I'm really struggling just to get my head around how that might work or might not work, and I was just wondering if someone could give some clarity on that for me, please.
Thank you, Bailey Williamson. Yes, we have received a drainage strategy as part of the proposals, which outlines what the intentions were. What we don't have at present is a condition requiring further details of the SUDs to be submitted and approved. So if members were minded to, we could add that on to the list of conditions. And certainly we have had feedback from the council's tree officer as to their opinion as to the impacts upon the tree and works required, and they are satisfied at this time.
You mentioned the tree, Paul. I was going to ask as probably a supplementary question, but it's so I understand the tree, whilst it hasn't got a TPO and against our tree preservation order, it is protected because it's in a conservation zone, and according to the tree report, it's recommended for removal. And I was just wondering what the opinion of our tree officer is on that.
Thank you again, Bailey Williamson. Let me just open up my emails. I just got the update earlier today. The opinion of the tree officer does outline that it accepts the tree is of amenity value and is well placed between the existing buildings, but he does note there are 3 issues with the tree. It does have codominant stems at 6 metres, which are recognised as presenting structural weakness with increased risk of stem failure. And due to its position in incremental growth, its retention will inevitably cause the failure of the retaining wall it currently abuts. And as it's an elm, there's a likelihood that at some stage it will be infected with Dutch elm disease. And invariably, elms appear to gain a certain maturity, then become more susceptible to Dutch elm disease. And he has highlighted that in light of those circumstances, that if an application were to be received for the removal of this tree, he would likely consent to its removal, albeit the tree is not on the applicant site, it's on adjoining land, so that's a process that we would have to go through separately. But as we've already heard today, certainly in the first instance, what the applicants are looking to do is to undertake some more simplistic measures to undertake works to the trees to allow for the development to take place. So the intention for the short term, and at least, is to retain the tree.
subject. So, so going back to the SUD scheme there, and the proposition within their drainage strategy is around about tree pits and water gardens. And when you've got an example of a pre-existing tree in there that's showing signs of elongation because it's chasing the light, are we we would need to be satisfied, therefore, that if there were further trees going to be put in there and a water garden, with the reduction in the light levels, that those replacements would therefore not, those sort of scheme would need to be effective for those. It would need to be effective by those trees growing, and if they're not going to grow properly, I'm wording this really badly, I do apologise, but it's if they're not going to, if the trees aren't going to grow properly because of lack of light, then the SUD scheme will not be as effective as it could be.
Thank you again, Bailey Williamson. We would seek appropriate advice from the Council's tree officer in line with the drainage strategy that is tabled, so that we can ensure that appropriate species are identified that will have the conditions that enable them to grow successfully.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, convener. My concern, as you probably no doubt guessed, is the flooding issue, which we always pick up on at any development. So if we were minded to, I'm quite conscious of the fact that 2 High Street, as far as I'm aware, and in fact this building haven't flooded, and it's a once in a lifetime event. In that event, if we were minded to approve this today, what is our liability, given in mind that SEPA and our own flood team are warning against allowing it? How are we accountable as a planning committee for anything? Thank you.
Right, Councillor James. Simply you're assessing it in planning terms. In terms of liability, of course, that is primarily down to the operator. You're only looking at the planning aspects.
So it wouldn't come back on us if, in the event it did flood then. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, convener. Just asking Mr. Williamson, you mentioned at the beginning that if this is approved by us, it has to go to Scottish ministers. So I just wanted you to expound on how that works so we understand, but is that effectively an appeal by us to the Scottish minister to overturn the statutory consultancy, or is it just asking them for their effective, not to rubber stamp or not rubber stamp what we've decided? Could you just explain how this works? Sorry.
Sure. As I tried to summarise at the beginning of the report, the notifications direction outlines that in instances where there is an objection from a government agency, and in this case SEPA, that we are required to notify the Scottish ministers of that objection if we are minded to approve. So it's not an appeal per se. It's much akin in a relatively similar fashion to when the Cairngorms National Park are notified of planning applications that are received in the PKC area that they might want to call in. We are essentially asking the Scottish ministers, are they satisfied with the approach that we're taking, or do you want to call it in and determine it yourselves with the recommendations of a reporter appointed by the Department of Planning and Environmental Appeals? And it's on that basis before that I have seen an approach taken where a flood evacuation plan has been utilised and agreed by a Scottish minister's reporter.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Paul covered that quite well. We send a recommendation to Scottish ministers and they decide whether or not they're happy for us to proceed or if they want to call it in. But I was just going to refer members as well to paragraph 46 in the report that sets out the balance in relation to flood risk policy and the level of consideration that is required. In effect, it needs to be demonstrated that we all understand what the risks are and that we're making a decision on balance. So again, paragraph 46 maybe refers back to the previous question as well.
Thank you. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, convener. Right, my question is ongoing on the chapter page paragraph 78 about there's been let me just read it off. The applicant has agreed proposals to open the building to the public on specified days. I'm not really picking this up in the conditions, and let's be realistic. The applicant may not always be the person who is owning or running the building in the future, and I'm wondering if this really should be something that should be conditioned a bit more strongly and captured better. Thank you.
We have condition 24, which I think is fairly clear. The details of to be submitted. It says prior to completion or occupation of the development hereby approved, which is ever as earlier, details of managed tours of the building to facilitate public access to the historic interior should be submitted to and agreed by the council as planning authorities. Details as agreed shall be implemented in full. So I'm not sure how much more we could make that clear. To submit details of how they will provide access and tours, and then they shall do that in line with our agreement.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Oh, thank you, convener. It's just a straightforward question in terms of, I'd like to ask what the plans are to replace the combined drain and sewage pipes, or what the current situation is regarding protecting the existing pipework from backflow in the event of a flood. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. As I outlined before, yes, a drainage strategy report has been submitted and outlined to ourselves. We've also consulted with Scottish Water in this instance. Obviously, part of the proposals will require confirmation from Scottish Water via the applicants as to any works that are undertaken to combine sewers, etc., how that operates. But that's a separate and parallel discussion that will ultimately take place. Any responsibility over works to it are the responsibility of the applicant.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, convener. Sorry, another question for Mr. Williamson. Sorry. There's a separate application for listed building consent going through. Do we have any idea how long that might take? Because it seems to be an overarching issue there.
No, the application for listed building consent has in essence been held in abeyance while we were awaiting the outcome of this application. So the intention would be to proceed to determine that at the earliest opportunity, particularly with case officer workload, etc., being focused on other areas as well with the conservation area appraisals. So we would like to proceed with that if members ultimately accept our recommendation and we notify the ministers.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Waters.
Just following on from Councillor Braun's statement on the listed building status, we are absolutely 100% comfortable that if this is approved and listed building is granted, there's no conflict. There's zero conflict in there, and we're comfortable. That's
yes.
Thank you. Vice Convener Stewart.
Thank you, convener. Follow-ons from Bailey Williamson's question about the tree, and also comments with regards to this application. How much light do you think will be lost with the extension?
It obviously is assessed as part of the daylight and sunlight report that has come in with the application. That was supplementary information that we sought from the applicants following the receipt of objections to the proposal. It highlights, obviously, and it assesses the position of the windows, height of the extension. It looks at the type of rooms that the windows serve in the existing property, which in this instance is largely kitchen and bedroom windows to the rear. It also acknowledges the curved stairwell, for example, the sense of enclosure already in the termination of the gable wall of the 1930s extension. So there are already quite significant impacts on light already. So as part of the judgment that we have to make, we have to analyse the difference between the two proposals in terms of existing and proposed. There's no getting away. It will impact on the levels of light. I think there are references within the quite technical response to 0.55 of an impact on it. So there will be some loss of light, but because of the types of rooms that they're serving, we are satisfied that it would not be to an extent that would warrant refusal.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. Therefore, can I ask for a motion? Peter Williamson.
Yeah, I think my motion would be to approve. Paul has satisfied me that essentially we can condition out some of the reservations I initially had around the SUD scheme and the landscaping plans. So my motion would be to approve the application.
Thank you. I will second that motion. Can I ask if there's an amendment? Councillor Braun.
Yes, convene an amendment, but I will be taking advice, I think, here from Mr. Elliott, because my motion is really to defer this one for the moment. It seems to me that if we approve, it's going to go to the Scottish ministers to decide on whether they want to go ahead or pass it on to the DPEA. We have a listed building consent which we're waiting for. If that's refused, then the applicants will have to make an appeal to the DPEA again. So we're looking at a situation where we could have two appeals running as such. So, and following on from what Mr. Williamson was saying about the listed building consent, it seems to me we're putting the cart before the horse here. So my deferment would be that we await a decision by listed building consent first and then go from there. That's my thoughts, but as with all deferments, I take advice from Mr. Elliott on this one.
I think your difficulty there is, my assessment of this and from a legal point of view, is this is the lead application that's needed first because of the objection from SEPA. So the LBC, in practical sense, not in a legal sense, practical sense, is riding on the back of that. The LBC is about the listed building, it's not about the flooding. So you need to get this one through. So I'm not quite sure what you would be achieving. If I put it that way, I'm not sure what you would be achieving by deferring.
My thought was just...
It potentially is another delay.
Yeah, but my thought behind it was if listed buildings consent is refused, then that's the overarching one, because that would stop everything, and if the applicants don't make an appeal. So that was my thoughts, was to get that one out of the way. And then we know that's been approved and we go through from there. But
no, it works the other way on this occasion, where this application, if committee is minded to grant, is notified to the Scottish ministers. Yeah. Now, if the ministers agree it goes ahead, the LBC could be looked at and potentially go through. If the ministers decide no, then in practical terms, that will kill the LBC as well. Okay, so this is the lead.
That's fine. I'll just not the practical side of it, but thank you for that.
Sometimes it works the other way around, but on this occasion, I think this is, in practical terms, the lead. Legally, they are separate applications.
Councillor Braun, maybe to give you some comfort, we have looked in some detail at the listed building consent application and are very comfortable with the approach that's been taken, as Mr. Elliott says. But we want this application determined first before we go through the whole process and effort of finalising that. But not to preempt anything, it's likely that a decision on the LBC will happen very soon after we get confirmation of the outcome from this application.
So, Councillor Braun, you wish to withdraw, right? So, is there any other amendment? No further amendment. Then can I ask the committee got any comment on the report? Councillor James.
Yeah, just a comment. It'd be lovely to actually see this building come back into use, convener. And you know, I know we're caught between a rock and a hard place here, but I hope the right thing's being done. It'd be nice to see this back up and running. The place hasn't flooded yet. We're only surmising that it might happen in the future. So, you know, I think we've made the right decision. Thank you.
Councillor Williamson, can I ask if you are agreeable to the amended conditions? And also, do you you said mention about putting in a further condition? There's not.
My thought was, as Paul actually mentioned it during questioning, was about bringing something back about the SUD scheme and sorry, not bringing it back, but there would be a condition put in about the SUDs and how it would work. And I think the landscaping plan is also condition 14, am I right? So it was just to try and condition that we are satisfied that the SUD scheme will work. So if that could be conditioned, I'd appreciate that too.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, so then for planning permission is granted with the updates to the wording relating to the implementation of the dust management conditions and condition 10, subject to notification to the Scottish Government ministers. And additional SUD condition. It's like a Monty Python sketch, this. Thank you. Okay, we move on to the next application. The next application is for the erection of a dwelling house with integrated farm office, glass house and dairy extension of access track and associated works at land 370 metres north of Flawcraig Farm, Rate, Perth. And to introduce the report is Mr. Williamson.
Thank you again, convener. The next application for consideration today relates to the erection of a dwelling house near Flawcraig, Rate. As outlined within the report, the applicants own and run Craighead Farm, a 21.37 hectare farming enterprise comprising pasture, grazable woodland and agroforestry. Livestock include sheep, cattle and goats, and the applicants currently reside in rented accommodation in the Carse as there's no available properties on the farm. Furthermore, the applicants also operate Guardswell Farm, which is an agri-tourism enterprise that caters for weddings and events and interlinked holiday accommodation. As such, the application has been supplemented by a labour justification report outlining why a house is essential for the ongoing operation of this viable farming enterprise. The house itself is proposed on land in an elevated position to the southwest of the applicant's land extents, yet in a relatively inconspicuous location nestled amongst the landscape with significant screening afforded by woodland to the south, west and north. It's also in close proximity to an existing agricultural storage shed approved via a prior notification. The dwelling is of contemporary appearance, yet of a low-rise scale, and would be constructed to an extremely high level of sustainability, including sourcing of local materials. This application has been referred to committee in light of the receipt of 22 letters of objection. As outlined in paragraph 41 of the report, the objections covered a wide range of issues from principal, visual and landscape impacts, noise, traffic congestion, and overlooking, to name just a few. In support, a total of 38 letters were received, which promoted the self-sufficiency of the proposal, family home provision and support of economic development. As outlined in the report, the independent report via the Scottish Agricultural College outlines that the proposal as it stands warrants one labour unit. Furthermore, if anticipated expansion of livestock occurs, then it would extend further to 1.39 units. The applicants are considered to have adequately demonstrated that there are no other properties available and that a rigorous site selection process was undertaken. Having considered all other policy requirements, it's considered that the layout, siting and design are all appropriate, and the recommendation is therefore one of approval. I'll now take members through a short presentation to outline the proposals further. First, we see the aerial extract showing the red line boundary of the site and utilisation of the existing access up from the public road. It also shows the relationship to Kinnaird. Next slide, please. We now see a part extract of the wider site, which shows the position of the dwelling relative to the existing pond and the nearby agricultural storage building. It also shows the topographical levels and the presence of the surrounding woodland, which will in most parts screen the proposals from wider viewpoints. Next slide, please. The next slide shows the respective elevations of the proposed dwelling and how it would sit at a midpoint and a plateau at this part of the farm. We'll now see a selection of site photos taken recently. These photos show the junction with the C401 looking back towards Rate on the left, with the photo on the right showing the existing track leading up towards the site. Next slide, please. These next photos show a selection of viewpoints for the house site. Top left is the view west, while bottom left is the view eastwards back towards Kinnaird. Top right is the view northwest, and bottom right is the view southeast. Next slide, please. The last photo shows the view westwards from just beyond the existing agricultural shed, with the landscape pond located just beyond. It also emphasises the levels change in the land and also the containment achieved with the existing landscape framework. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation, and I leave you with the site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We do have deputations on this item, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Can I call on Mr. Milner-Smith? Mr. Milner-Smith's an objector to the application. Good morning. You'll be aware that you've got 5 minutes to speak. Just whenever you feel comfortable, I'll start the clock.
Good morning, Convener, members of the panel, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, Vice Convener, thank you. Thank you for hearing this deputation on behalf of the residents of Kinnaird and the BCCG. The approval of this application may seem like a done deal given the Development Officer's confusing decision to recommend for approval while stating in the report of handling that this application does not meet category 3.5 of policy 19. However, there is too much conflicting and misleading information given by the applicants yet to be answered. The residents of Kinnaird would like to draw the committee's attention to the following, which require clarification before any decision can be made. For clarity, I will be referring to Gardswell as the lands to the east of Kinnaird and Craighead as the land to the west on which the application in front of you is cited. It should be noted we do not have any gripe with Anna and Digby and support in general their work at Gardswell Farm. We would offer the same objection to anyone submitting this level of planning in this location. However, the applicants have been the subject of several enforcements at Gardswell and Craighead, and this has caused the residents a very legitimate concern that any development of the application in question would not be followed and is not fully genuine. Given the unusual elements of the application in order to make it comply with policy, any inability to follow these would render the reasons for granting the planning void. The application for development of a house seems to be referring to the need for a dwelling on Craighead Farm, yet in the documents it states it is needed to service Gardswell Farm. The land referred to as Craighead Farm is in fact simply 2 fields that are part of the lands of Gardswell Farm. There are no official documents proving Craighead Farm as a current separate entity on this site. It would seem that Gardswell and the land at Craighead are inextricably linked by ownership, venture and plans. It would be of interest to know whether or not the applicants have separate CPH numbers for the livestock. One CPH number would show that it is one farm not requiring a dwelling on the Craighead site. 2 CPH numbers would show the intention to run separate commercial operations and therefore further development on Craighead Hill, not just the dwelling as stated. The applicants state they wish to have a nano dairy for home use, yet in the application for the agricultural shed, they say they're exploring a micro dairy for commercial use at Gardswell. Surely both are not needed. The application also talks about the micro dairy as part of their expanding business. Why does a single dwelling requiring its own require its own dairy solely for home use when there is one a short walk away at the main farm? Or is it their intention to use the home dairy for commercial use? The applicants have informed you of their apple growing venture on Craighead. They have not detailed where cider production is to take place. It is a concern that this is planned for development also on the site. This will vastly increase traffic, and instead of being the self-sufficient dwelling house for a family, it will become overdeveloped and clearly commercial. The recent SAC report states that there is a need for on-site housing given the farming hours of the current livestock level. More concerning is the report's identification that by spring 2026, there will be a 40% increase in the livestock level, which will continue to grow as the livestock breed. This will then require the need for further housing and further development. The report also states that the applicants wish to expand and grow the business. The question had been asked why a suitable site on Guardswell Farm had not been identified. The applicants have issued their report, only recently available on the planning portal, showing many areas they assessed. As this was not done at the time of the application, no chance was given to question the results. It seems highly unlikely that all the areas scored so low, and some of the reasons given are not valid, such as the land not being flat. The site in question in the application in front of you is far from flat, and there are many houses on the edge of Guardswell that have been successfully built on sloped ground. There are indeed several buildings already on Guardswell, so it would seem unlikely there is no possibility of another one. These sites need to be independently reviewed and assessed for suitability before opening the floodgates to development on untouched and unspoiled land. There would be no reason against living on Guardswell and having livestock on Craighead. Having worked 500+ acre farms with only one farmhouse, I can assure you there is no need to have a dwelling. The house on Guardswell is perfectly close enough. In conclusion, it is far too confusing an application with no definite or clear plan on what will or will not happen. On one hand, it is being touted as a self-sufficient dwelling house for a family, and on the other, it is the start of an ever-expanding commercial operation. Although the report of handling addresses the issues of future potential uses, the grant of planning for this application hinges on the intentions of the applicants. If they apply on the basis of family dwelling for self-sufficiency, then there must be no foreseeable future development to the contrary. If the possibility is there to expand commercially, then this needs to be assessed now. Surely good farm and business practice to look ahead, and the SAC report even does it for them. Until these questions have been clarified on record, we ask the committee refuse or defer the application as it stands. To quote Christian Smith from 2 hours ago, the most sustainable thing is to use the thing that already exists. Thank you for your time. There are countless other points, but 5 minutes is all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Milner-Smith. Are you willing to take questions from members? Members, could you populate the chat function? Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener, and thank you for your deputation. This land, I presume, is agricultural land as such, and therefore any development on it will have to be agriculture related. So really my question really is, this is going to bring business into the area, surely. Is that not a good thing? You said the micro dairy might expand into something bigger. Isn't that a good thing?
Having a dairy at Guardswell, no objection to that at all. What is not clear from the pictures shown is the location of Craighead to Guardswell, and I don't know whether you've got a slide or can bring one up or it's in your documents. The Guardswell itself is, from memory, the whole lands at Guardswell, according to the Register of Scotland, is 150, 160 acres, of which Craighead is part of that, linked by a track across the fields. There is no reason to develop on that land buildings that could be built at Guardswell. The fact that Guardswell is currently used as agritourism, I will be honest and say the feeling is loosely agritourism, because a wedding events venue, just because it's held on a farm, is not agritourism. There's plenty of space on Guardswell Farm proper that could house a dairy. I think there may even be one there already, so there's no need for a second one.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and obviously the land is linked, is what you're saying. If what you're saying is effectively one farm, does it matter where the micro dairy goes? If you're expanding your business, you've said you're going to farm yourself, all farms have to expand now because and diversify. So Does it matter which part of the land it's on?
I believe it does. The residents of Kinnaird believe it does. You see a picture there of the Castle of Gary from Knoll Hill. If little pockets of large agricultural sheds start popping up on completely untouched land, you saw from the photos themselves, and as was also pointed out earlier, it's not about whether you can see it, but the fact it exists, and you will be able to see it from various roads. That one development for a single house then leads to another house for a second worker, that leads to a large agricultural shed. The applicants have a P&A for an agricultural shed at the beginning of that track that in 2023 was cited as critical and they must have it, yet work hasn't even started. So they've got a provision for an agricultural shed for machinery at the bottom, out of sight, on the road, the C401. There is no reason, we believe, that any development should take place.
Mr. Milner-Smith, there's no further questions. You're free to go. Can you now call on Mr. and Mrs. Lamotte, applicants? Morning. I'm sure you're aware of the procedure. You've got 5 minutes for your deputation. Whenever you're comfortable, I'll start the clock.
Hello, we are Anna and Digby Lamotte, and we've applied for a new farmhouse and family home on our farm at Craighead. And today we're here to illustrate how this application enables a young farming family to expand its existing farming operation, isn't removing productive farmland from operation, and provides a farmhouse which is intrinsically linked to the land. Firstly, I wanted to say an enormous thank you to the committee for letting us speak today, and also for the planning department for their recommendation to approve. So who are we? Both Digby and myself grew up in Perthshire, and we've got a young family with our 3.5-year-old daughter Aster and our 5-month-old son Ludo. So between us, we've been involved in farming in some form since we were children, and we've been farming regeneratively together for the last 6 years. We farm dual-purpose native cattle, 3 different breeds of sheep, Angora goats. We've planted around 3,000 fruit trees at Craighead Farm, have planted in excess of 20,000 trees across the wider farms, with plans for significantly more. And we operate under organic principles and direct retail all of our end products from the farm. It's important to state that we don't currently live at Craighead Farm. No houses exist on the farm, and we live off-site in rented accommodation. Not living on or close to the farm makes it extremely challenging, and at this point, near impossible to run our farm, especially as we're operating a regenerative livestock model, which is more time consuming than a conventional farm. The report by SAC details that we have one labour unit justifying a home, and that is based purely on livestock numbers and does not take into account the hours required by our haymaking and grassland management, plus orchard care and harvest. Taking these into account, the labour unit increases by nearly 80%, plus the scope for growth within the farming operation. In addition to our successful and scaling farming business, which is the basis of our application, between us, we have set up and run 3 additional rural enterprises, which showcases Perthshire to the world, attracts high-value tourists to the local area, provides local employment, and has significant positive impacts on the local rural community and economy. These include Diggers Fine Cider, which is a low-intervention fine cider business which supplies ciders to restaurants and retailers across the UK. Guardswell Grows, a chemical-free market garden which supplies nutritious vegetables to local residents and businesses, and it's had a wee pause this year because of Ludo. Guardswell Farm, an internationally recognised brand in agritourism, which is regularly recognised as one of the best farm stays in Europe. We do have 3 properties at Guardswell Farm. However, we have bookings 2 and sometimes 3 years in advance from the current date, and occupancy levels over 80%. But more importantly, they are pivotal to the viability of the business, which employs 12 local people and indirectly contributes over 2 million to the local economy annually. We feel that this application is not just positive, but progressive, and there are 3 key areas that we wish to expand upon. Growing our farming business. Being able to live on the farm, we'll be able to continue to grow our farming operation and build upon what we've already invested in it, all whilst maintaining our high welfare standards and further embed our more labour-intensive regenerative farming model, which benefits our livestock, the soil and biodiversity. All the while growing our direct retail business from the farm, which provides high quality and nutritious food to the local area and further afield via produce boxes. We aren't taking productive farmland out of our farming system. We've been very careful in selecting where we think is the best site for the farmhouse, which includes choosing a site which has some of the least productive land on the farm, whilst also being close to where labour-intensive activities take place, for example, the lambing and calving shed. It's important to note that whilst the footprint of the house will no longer be grazed, our intention is to still graze up and around the farmhouse throughout the year. This is for a farmhouse and not a property to resell. We know that as a general rule, most councils are concerned about granting permission for new houses on farms, as previously the policy has been taken advantage of. However, leaving aside our genuine need and sincerity in this application and desire to live here for life, this is truly a farm and a house for a farm and for farmers. The design of the house within the application features an integrated greenhouse and nano dairy, which I would like to explain slightly is separate from the micro dairy. The nano dairy is very much a house cow for our own personal consumption, and the micro dairy is a separate enterprise in its own right at Gardswell Farm, which will allow us to live on and from the farm as wholly as possible, as well as the heating system intrinsically linked to the farm. Minimal impact. In addition to the farming credentials of this application, we feel the impact of this application is minimal. And before we close, we wanted to highlight that the design and siting of the home are considerate to the landscape, and the building cannot be seen from any houses within the directly surrounding area, including the nearest property, which is over 400 metres away. General access. As a principle, we actively encourage other responsible land users and have installed pedestrian gates and created walking routes across both Craighead and Gardswell. And we take pride in our accessibility standards on the land we manage. We know concerns were raised about access during this application, and we feel really positive that these concerns have been addressed with community green space with a suitable walking route already agreed. A sustainable home. The design of the home will allow us to live a dramatically more sustainable lifestyle. To try and highlight the positive impact of this application, by being able to live on the farm, we will be able to remove 6,523.4 commuter miles and save 1.78 tonnes of CO2 per year being emitted. We sincerely hope that you look favourably upon this application, as we're now at a critical juncture with regards to continued operation and expansion of our farm, developing our other rural enterprises, and balancing the needs of a young family who wish to fully put down roots and live sustainably in an area we passionately care about. Thank you again to the Planning Department for their assistance, and also for the committee for taking the time to hear us today, and we're happy to take any questions.
Members, if you'd like to populate the chat function, if you have any questions for Lamont. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Just want to come back to something that Mr. Milner-Smith was discussing, and two farms, but linked, as I understand it. So is your livestock on this farm or the other farm? I'm just trying to see how this all balances out, how they work between these.
We have rented land also in the Valley of the Cast as well. And so the livestock is predominantly on Craighead and then moved between the other land holdings as well. So all of it is productive farmland, but they are different holdings. They have the same CPH because you're allowed to have one CPH that covers multiple land that you don't own.
For people that are listening online and other members, what's a CPH, please?
I can't say the technical term, but
it's County Parish Holding Number.
So yeah, it's a registration for you to hold livestock.
Councillor James.
Thanks. What a great presentation. Have any of the locals come to you directly with their objections? And if they have, how have you addressed them, please?
So prior to our application, we emailed everyone who had previously put in a objection, and also to the Milner-Smiths here, and asked if they would like to meet with us and chat with us about any of their concerns, and every single person declined to comment, saying they would rather not talk to us on it. So yes, we've tried to address concerns and been open to discussions, but no one has come forth.
Thank you.
There appears to be no further questions. You're free to. Like to keep me on my toes. Councillor Braun.
My fingers can't work that fast. I'm not a shorthand expert. I'm typist, sorry. What are your plans for the future for the farm? Because this was another subject that came up, the labour intensive side of it. If that's going to start expanding, you might need more property. So can you just give me an outline of that first of all?
Is that from the farming access or the agritourism side, or both? Oops.
I think it's both generally, but it was specifically on this bit of land, what your plans are for it.
So our plan is to continue to farm the land as it is. So we don't have any other plans at present to develop the land differently, apart from the agroforestry we have, the orchards and the grazing that we have. So we are looking at other agritourism enterprises, but they are very much to be condensed around the agritourism business, because we want to keep all of that as one site. And then this is our kind of farm for ourselves, our home site.
Your second question?
Yeah, just a supplementary to that, actually, for the first of all, was just, so will you be looking for more people to work for you on this particular land, or are you going to work this yourselves?
So we already work it ourselves, and we are potentially in the future, well, this year, going to employ someone, but we will not be seeking further dwellings on this farm.
And the other point I was just raised was, I think somewhere in the paperwork, I can't find it very quickly now, mentioned that a lot of the water will come from rainwater. What happens if it doesn't rain? I mean, are you going to connect to a private supply in some way as a backup?
So no, we're not going to connect to the mains. We are hoping to be this house, not just rainwater, but everything to be solely off grid as part of our application. And we'll be looking at rainwater collection. So with the nearby lambing and calving shed, which is there, and also the size of the roof, there is, so basically per millimetre of rain per metre squared, you get a litre of water. So we are looking to put a large water tank at the back of the lambing shed that all water from the roofs from those properties will go into. That'll be of a subsequent size to allow us to manage the periods of drought.
For the second time, there appears to be no further questions. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations on this application, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask committee if they have any questions for officers? Councillor Braun.
Yeah, so thanks, Convener. Question from Mr. Williamson. What is the procedure? There's two questions really. I'll ask this one first. As a farm expands and they're looking to build sheds or whatever on the land, forget houses for a minute, but just dairies or sheds or whatever, do they have to seek plan permission for that as a formality? I know there's special rules for agricultural business, but so they still have to come back to us, not necessarily to committee, but to come back to you to get approval for it.
Thank you, Councillor Braun. Very much depends upon the extent, size and use of the building proposed. There are some abilities to apply via the prior notification process, which the applicants have already done previously. They could come forward again for further buildings in due course, but it would either have to go via prior notification or via planning applications, depending on what it was for.
Thank you. Vice Convener Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. Convener, I'd like to ask about the Mr. Williamson made note about the Scottish Agricultural College, and the farm requires one person just now with a possible 1.3 in the future. Is this organisation an independent organisation?
They are independent in that they are appointed, obviously, by the applicants to undertake the research into the background and the labour hours. They are recognised as one of the market leaders. There are other organisations which undertake similar roles, but in most part, the SAC are responsible for the significant majority of labour requirement reports that are produced and submitted to ourselves and more widely across Scotland.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Convener. A general question, but it's a bit still linked with this application. We see a lot of our farmhouses and that getting sold off for residential houses, i.e. not attached to farms anymore. in the future, what's to prevent this happening with this application, and is there anything that can get put in there at all that would give assurances that it could be linked to the farm?
Thank you, Councillor Waters. I'll try and be as brief as I can. Back in 2014, the then Chief Planner, Jim McKinnon, issued a letter which outlined that the use of planning conditions or legal agreements restricting the use or tying the use of dwellings to farmland is a practice which was outdated and should no longer be used. It was causing significant constraints from a financial and borrowing perspective. So from that point, we're in a position that we no longer utilise conditions or legal agreements to restrict the use of houses. Clearly, in this instance, there would be nothing preventing them from selling it on, albeit what I would say is, given the lengths that the applicants have gone to in respect of the design, the layout, the passion that they are showing in terms of their commitment to Craighead Farm and more widely Guardswell, I would think it would be somewhat unlikely that they would go down that route, but it's not something that we would look to control via planning condition or agreement.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, we need to assess the application on the basis of the situation at the minute and not think about what ifs. And that's the basis of Jim McKinnon's letter back in 2014, that the planning authority should decide whether there is a necessity for a house. If yes, grant permission. If no, don't grant permission.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. Coming back to Mr. Williamson again, sorry. And following from Councillor Stewart's question about the agricultural consultant's report, at the moment it says it stands at 1, and you mentioned it could rise to 1.3. So I'm assuming that if we got to 2, that would qualify for 2 labour units to work on there. If that was the case, forget agricultural buildings for the minute, going back to houses, they would have to come back for planning for further property if they so wanted, because they've now got the justification for that. But they will still have to come back to us, not necessarily the committee, but to yourselves. Is that right?
Yeah, just to be clear, a labour justification report justifies a certain level of labour units within a site. So a report which says that you require 10 labour units does not necessarily equate to you require 10 houses on a site. So it's very much then assessing it down into the nitty-gritty and finer detail of identifying whether there are particular needs of an applicant. Obviously, in this instance, there's livestock considerations, which is the primary factor for our support for it. Obviously, any other application, if they do find themselves in a fortuitous position of being able to expand the business, we would assess any such application at that time. But as we've heard from Mr. Lamott today, there's no intention to be seeking any further dwelling houses at this time.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Braun.
Yeah, just to follow up on something else which I should have mentioned, and that's the siting of the property. In the report, they mentioned there are other locations suggested. Are we happy that the site is the correct one?
We are recommending approval of this application.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. Can I ask for a motion? Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, Convener. I am happy to support the application recommendation for approval as set out in the plans by the officers. This application is being put forward by business owners, generational business owners, who are committed to staying within our locality, have a young family who will be growing up in the area. Economically, this is positive. Socially, this is positive. As Anna Lamott said herself, it is a sincere application, and in my view, that has been demonstrated. The objections, I was struggling to actually find the reasonings for the objections other than opinion. So there is nothing to suggest that we should not be supporting this application as it stands, and I wish them all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James, do you wish to second?
Thanks, convener. Yes, I would. At a time when farms and farmers are under immense pressure as businesses and business owners, we've got an application before us for somebody to hold on to their farming business, and I think we should be supporting them. I can't see any reason why we should turn it down. And in our papers, you'll see that there were more support for this application than there were objectors for this application. So I wish them well. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's any amendment? No amendment. Can I ask if committee have any comments on the report? No comments. Okay, thank you. Therefore, planning permission is therefore granted. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute recess at the moment. 5 minutes, very quickly. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, then we'll move swiftly on to the final application for today. Yes, it is. And this is for the erection of an agricultural storage building at land 35 metres west of Calasona, Rutherfield, Perth. And to introduce the report is Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, convener. The final local application for consideration today relates to the erection of a replacement building for potato storage at Rutherfield to the northwest of Perth. The area in question originally formed part of Rutherford Farm, which has incrementally been developed more intensively since the 1970s, with the buildings associated with the applicant's operation having been developed in some instances before many of the houses fronting Rutherfield Road. As members shall see in due course, the relationship between the applicant's property and dwellings is particularly close, and the wider area is undergoing quite significant change as Perth extends westwards and northwestwards. In this instance, the existing building is no longer fit for purpose, and following a review of operations and the provision of a screening machine in another building, the new building is to replace the lost storage space. Therefore, the applicant has indicated that there is no envisaged change to the volume of product handled through the site. As indicated in the report, the application has been referred to committee in light of the receipt of 6 representations, including 1 from the Methven and District Community Council. In terms of the matters raised, they principally related to impacts on residential amenity, loss of biodiversity and drainage. Non-material matters included the loss of view and the presence of asbestos in existing buildings. In this instance, the wider use of the site for potato storage is not questioned. The main issue is a comparison between the scale of the existing building and that of the proposed building, and whether any unacceptable impacts would arise. As outlined in the report, the floor area of the existing building is approximately 576 square metres, while the proposal is 665 square metres, thereby a relatively modest increase of around 14% in floor area. However, the eaves height of the building would almost double from 3.7 to 7 metres, while the ridge would increase from 5 to 9.5 metres. There's no debate that the proposal would have a considerable visual impact in direct comparison to the existing sheds. However, consideration must be given to the potential for the existing business to upgrade and replace its building stock to allow for continued operation against the potential impacts on neighbouring residential amenity. Having obtained additional supporting information from the applicant in respect of overshadowing diagrams, it's been concluded that the associated impacts from the increase in building height would not have a sufficiently significant difference upon existing overshadowing which would warrant the refusal of the application. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to the conditions listed within the report, and I'll now take members through a short presentation to outline the proposals further. First, we see the aerial extract showing the red line boundary of the site. The Almond Valley allocation of the LDP lies to the northwest of this site. Next slide, please. Next, we see an enhanced aerial image which shows the relationship between the existing potato storage operation and the adjacent residential properties. The building being replaced on the Smiley site is the southmost building as the site tapers, with the green container evident to the right of it. Next slide, please. We now see the site plan. This shows the white footprint of the proposal with its north-south alignment stepped westwards of the existing footprint, which can just be seen dashed in red. Next slide, please. We now see the elevations of the proposal. Proposed finishing materials are grey metal cladding, and as previously outlined, the height would increase from 5 to 9.5 metres to roof ridge, albeit the building would be moved westwards by 5.3 metres. Next slide, please. Next, we see the sections through the proposal with the original outlined in red and the respective relationships with Callasona at the top and Auchenry beneath. The latter shows a minor infringement on the 25-degree daylight line. However, the proposed building is located to the northwest, thus sunlight impacts are lessened. As can be seen from the plan extract at the bottom, of the westward orientation of the rear of the dwelling would still be in most part open. Next slide, please. This slide shows the floor plan for the proposed potato storage building. One overhead roller door would be located on the east elevation towards residential property. Next slide, please. And this plan shows the difference between the overshadowing from the existing building at the top and the proposed building at the bottom during springtime. Next slide, please. Again, this is a similar extract for the autumn. Next slide, please. And then this is an extract for winter, which is almost identical to the situation at present. We will now see a selection of site visit photos taken recently by the case officer. This first photo shows the view southwards from inside the yard towards the existing building. Next slide, please. These next photos show the view from outside Auchenry and Rothenfield Road top left, with the view from the southern tip of the yard southwards towards Rothenfield and Berrybrow cottages respectively at the top right. The bottom images show just how close the existing building is to the boundary at around 1.5 metres, where it shall increase to 2.3 metres. Next slide, please. These last photos show the view northwards from the southern part of the yard with the existing building, with the roofs of Callasona and Auchenry just visible beyond the coniferous boundary hedging. The bottom images show the rear garden of Callasona with the existing buildings beyond, with the next building of a broadly similar scale to that proposed. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation, and I leave you with the site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. We do have deputations on this item, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. We don't have our deputations in person, and the first one is Mr. Stronach, who is the objector, and there'll be a statement read by the clerk to the committee. Ms. Brown, over to you, please.
Thank you. This is a statement from Mr. Andy Stronach. I have reviewed the report regarding this application. Whilst I note the several conditions, I have concern regarding residential amenity in regards to paragraph 36. Within my letter of objection, I noted for the potential by applicant to store potato boxes 8 high, being 8 metres, and requested this be limited to 3 boxes high as a condition. Paragraph 36 notes that the applicant's confirmation of no intention to store boxes 8 high. This does not identify maximum height intended, and if this is between 4 and 7 high, this would still be unacceptable to myself. There is no condition noting limiting height of boxes, only a reference to HSE as regulatory body restacking of boxes. I would request that my ongoing concerns regarding this issue be taken into account.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I don't see Mr. Murray, agent, who is going to call in to take questions from members, but I don't see that there just now. We have tried to attempt to make contact with Mr. Murray, I believe, so we'll take no further delegations or questions. Convener, I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you. Can I ask if committee have any questions for officers? No questions for officers. And can I ask for a motion? Billy McLaren.
Yeah, me again. I am happy to be also supporting this application, which is in front of us, recommendations for approval. It's set out in the papers by officers. This application represents an update of what, going by the pictures, is very dated storage for potato boxes, potatoes. Surely this will make this business more efficient. This is for food production. Production that goes to our supermarkets. This is an important part of the Perthshire economy as well. So again, it's great to see that there is a business investing and looking to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Braun, you wish to second?
Yes, I'm happy to second, convener. I think paper speaks for itself. I note the concerns of the objector, but I'm sure HSE will monitor what's going on site. The applicant said they're used to dealing with asbestos, which is fair enough, and they've also indicated that they're not going to change the way they operate, and that there's no intention to stack boxes more than 8 high. So I'm happy with that. Happy with HSE to do it, and happy to second.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's an amendment? No amendment. Can I ask if committee have any comments on the report? No comments. Okay, therefore planning permission is therefore granted. Thank you. Swiftly move on to item 6, which is a proposal of application notices. And the first one is for a residential get my teeth back in. Residential development at allocated site H20, land 180 metres east of Latchburn for Dunning. Can I ask if members have any comments on the report? No comments on that report. So we move on swiftly to the second one, which is for the installation of a 49.9 megawatt battery energy storage system and associated infrastructure and landscaping works at land 300 metres northwest of Jamesfield Garden Centre, Newborough. Do members have any comments on this report? Councillor James.
Yeah, no surprises there then, convener. I'm conscious that we've recently approved a facility next to this garden centre who seem to be under siege at the moment. Can I ask our officers to please take into cognizance the potential industrialisation of the area? It just seems we're getting an awful lot of these battery storage, solar panel, lots of stuff, I'm very conscious that I wouldn't want to see PKC industrialised to that extent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Illingworth.
Okay, thank you. I've got 4 now. Councillor James mentioned cumulative impact. Can I ask the planning to take into account fire safety due to water being supplied by a borehole? Also the use of agricultural land, a construction traffic plan, and the use of a bond to ensure rehabilitation when the project is finished.
Councillor Illingworth. Any further comments? No further comments. Well, that is the last item of business today. Can I ask that everybody stays back for just a couple of minutes? Mr. Elliott has something to say. And also, I just want it noted that this is the very first committee that I've ever had a Lord and a baby at the same time in my committee. So that's a first for us. Thank you.